Okay, so you want to own a brewery. Stainless steel tanks gleaming under industrial lighting. The smell of hops and malt filling the air. A taproom full of people drinking beer you made. Your logo on cans in local bottle shops. Maybe distribution to bars and restaurants across the region. You are a brewmaster and a business owner. You built something tangible. But here is what people who actually own successful breweries know, and what most people romanticizing the craft beer industry never tell you. A brewery is not a bar that makes its own beer. It is a capital-intensive beverage manufacturing operation competing in the most saturated alcohol category in American history, where the cost to produce a pint is 60 cents, but you are competing against brands spending $50 million on marketing, where regulatory compliance spans federal, state, and local jurisdictions with penalties that can shut you down overnight, and where the three-tiered distribution system was literally designed to prevent small producers from reaching customers efficiently. The margins can work. The barriers are real, in ways that most people never see coming. Let's start at the beginning. When people say brewery, they are usually picturing one thing: a taproom and production facility combined. You walk in the front door and there is a bar, seating for 80 to 150 people, 12 to 20 taps pouring your own beers. Behind a glass wall or open to the space, you see the brew house, fermentation tanks, bright tanks, and kegs. You make beer on-site, serve it fresh in your taproom, and sell it in kegs, cans, or bottles to distributors, retailers, or directly to customers. That is the modern craft brewery format, specifically called a brewpub if you serve food, or a microbrewery if you are production-focused with a small taproom. The entire business model is built on controlling the full value chain from grain to glass, capturing retail margins by selling directly to consumers in your taproom while building wholesale revenue through distribution. Here is something that surprises people when they first look at this industry. The United States had approximately 9,700 active breweries operating as of 2024. That is more breweries than at any point in American history, including the pre-Prohibition era. The craft beer segment grew explosively from 2008 to 2016, when new brewery openings averaged 700 to 900 per year. But that growth created a problem: saturation. By 2019, brewery openings slowed. Closures increased. In 2020, COVID-19 devastated taproom-dependent breweries. Over 300 breweries closed in 2020 alone. Another 400-plus closed in 2021 and 2022 combined. The industry is consolidating. Total U.S. beer consumption has been declining since 2012. Americans are drinking less beer overall, shifting to hard seltzers, ready-to-drink cocktails, wine, and spirits. The craft beer segment is not growing. It is reallocating. New breweries are taking share from existing breweries, not expanding the market. You are entering a mature, hyper-competitive market where distribution is controlled by large wholesalers who prioritize big beer brands, where shelf space is finite and expensive, and where customer loyalty is fleeting. This is the market you are entering now. Before you spend a single dollar, you need to decide what kind of brewery you are building. A nanobrewery, producing less than 3 barrels per batch, 93 gallons, primarily for on-site consumption. A microbrewery, producing 100 to 2,000 barrels per year with taproom and limited distribution. Or a production brewery, 5,000 plus barrels annually, focused on wholesale distribution with a smaller taproom component. Each model has completely different capital requirements, revenue potential, and operational complexity. Most first-time brewery owners start with a microbrewery, 7-barrel or 10-barrel brew system, producing 500 to 1,200 barrels annually, 15,500 to 37,200 gallons. Operating a taproom as the primary revenue driver with modest self-distribution or single distributor partnerships. Let's model that. You need a location. Brewery real estate requirements are specific. You need 3,000 to 6,000 square feet minimum. Roughly 40% to 50% for production, the brew house, fermentation space, cold storage, packaging area. The other 50% to 60% for the taproom, bar, seating, bathrooms, and back of house. You need high ceilings, 14 to 20 feet, to accommodate tall fermentation tanks and overhead utilities. You need loading dock access or at least wide doors for receiving grain deliveries and shipping kegs. You need heavy-duty electrical service, 200 to 400 amps, three-phase power for brewing equipment, glycol chillers, and refrigeration. You need robust plumbing, floor drains, and wastewater capacity because brewing uses massive amounts of water. You need commercial or industrial zoning that allows both manufacturing and on-site retail alcohol sales. Many municipalities require conditional use permits or special zoning variances for breweries. A 4,000 to 5,000 square foot space in a secondary urban or industrial area rents for $4,000 to $12,000 per month, depending on the market. In desirable craft beer-friendly cities like Denver, Portland, San Diego, or Asheville, $8,000 to $18,000 per month. In secondary markets or industrial zones, $3,500 to $8,000. Let's call it $7,000 per month, $84,000 annually. Most commercial leases require 5 to 10-year terms with personal guarantees. First month, last month, and 2 to 3 months security deposit upfront. That is $28,000 to $35,000 just to sign the lease before build-out begins. Now comes the build-out. And this is where first-time brewery owners consistently underestimate costs by 40% to 60%. You need a taproom build-out, bar construction, back bar with tap system, draft lines, glycol chilling system, kegerator or walk-in cooler for kegs, POS system, glassware storage, seating, tables, lighting, flooring, bathrooms that meet ADA and health code requirements. Taproom build-out in a raw space, $80,000 to $180,000 depending on finishes and whether you are doing cosmetic work or full construction. You need production space preparation. Epoxy-coated or sealed concrete floors with integrated drains, reinforced areas for heavy equipment, plumbing rough-in for water supply and drainage, electrical rough-in for 220V and 440V equipment, HVAC or ventilation for brewhouse steam and heat. Production space prep, $30,000 to $80,000. You need the brew system itself. This is the heart of the operation. A 7-barrel electric or gas-fired brewhouse, mash tun, lauter tun, brew kettle, hot liquor tank, heat exchanger, pumps, hoses, and control systems costs $80,000 to $150,000 new from manufacturers like Blichmann, SS Brewtech, or Premier Stainless. A 10-barrel system, $120,000 to $200,000 new. A used 7-barrel system in good condition, $40,000 to $80,000. You need fermentation tanks. Stainless steel conical fermenters with temperature control jackets. A 7-barrel brew house typically needs 4 to 8 fermentation tanks to maintain consistent production schedules. Each 7-barrel fermenter costs $6,000 to $12,000 new, $3,000 to $6,000 used. For 6 tanks, that is $36,000 to $72,000 new, $18,000 to $36,000 used. You need bright tanks for conditioning and carbonating finished beer, 2 to 4 tanks, $8,000 to $20,000. You need a glycol chiller to cool the fermentation tanks, $8,000 to $18,000. You need a keg washer and filler, $6,000 to $25,000 depending on automation level. If you are canning, you need a canning line. A manual or semi-automatic canning system for a small brewery, $25,000 to $80,000. Fully automatic lines, $100,000 to $300,000 plus. Many small breweries skip canning initially or use mobile canning services that charge 18 cents to 35 cents per can. You need kegs. A half-barrel keg, 15.5 gallons, costs $90 to $140 new. You need 30 to 80 kegs to start, $2,700 to $11,200. You need a cold room or walk-in cooler for finished product storage, $8,000 to $25,000. You need grain storage, malt comes in 55-pound bags. You need dry storage or silos, $2,000 to $8,000. You need a mill to crush grain, $2,000 to $8,000. You need lab equipment for quality control, microscope, pH meter, hydrometer, testing supplies, $2,000 to $6,000. You need cleaning and sanitation equipment, CIP system or manual cleaning supplies, $3,000 to $12,000. You need small wares, hoses, clamps, gaskets, tools, $3,000 to $8,000. Total equipment cost for a 7-barrel brewery, buying mostly new equipment, $300,000 to $500,000. Buying strategic used equipment and starting lean, $180,000 to $320,000. Then you need furniture, fixtures, and equipment for the taproom. Tables, chairs, bar stools, glassware, $15,000 to $35,000. Signage, interior and exterior, $8,000 to $25,000. POS system and back-office software, $5,000 to $12,000. Permits and licensing. This is a nightmare of regulatory complexity. You need a federal brewer's notice from the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, TTB. Application is free but requires extensive documentation, background checks, and 3 to 6 months processing time. You need a state brewery license. Cost varies wildly by state, $100 to $5,000 annually. You need local business licenses, $50 to $1,000. If you are serving beer on-site, you need on-premise consumption permits, $500 to $10,000 depending on jurisdiction. If you plan to distribute, you need additional permits in every state you sell into. You need formula approvals from the TTB for every beer recipe. You need label approvals, certificate of label approval, COLA, for every beer you package and sell. Total permitting and legal costs to open, $8,000 to $25,000. Initial inventory of ingredients. Malt, hops, yeast, chemicals, $5,000 to $12,000 to brew your first batches and stock the taproom. Pre-opening marketing, website, social media, launch event, $5,000 to $15,000. Let's add it up. Lease deposits and first costs, $30,000. Build-out, taproom and production, $150,000. Brewing equipment and tanks, $250,000. Kegs, cold storage, ancillary equipment, $40,000. Taproom FF&E, $25,000. Permits and legal, $15,000. Initial inventory, $8,000. Marketing, $8,000. Total capital requirement to open a small craft brewery with taproom, $526,000. And you have not brewed a single batch yet. Most brewery owners raise this capital through a combination of personal savings, friends and family investment, SBA loans, and sometimes crowdfunding or local investors. The typical financing structure is $150,000 to $200,000 in owner equity and $300,000 to $400,000 in debt at 6% to 9% interest over 10 years. At $350,000 borrowed at 7.5% over 10 years, your annual debt service is approximately $50,000. Now let's talk about the economics of making and selling beer. The cost to produce 1 barrel of beer, 31 gallons, roughly 2 kegs, varies by recipe but generally runs $80 to $140 for a standard ale. That includes malt, $30 to $50, hops, $15 to $40 depending on style, yeast, $8 to $15, water and utilities allocated per batch, $5 to $10, and chemicals for cleaning and sanitation, $5 to $8. Call it $100 per barrel all in for a typical IPA or pale ale. A barrel yields 124 pints, 16-ounce servings. Your cost per pint is 81 cents. You sell that pint in your taproom for $6 to $8. Let's say $7. Your gross margin on taproom sales is 88%. You sell that same beer in a keg to a distributor or directly to a bar for $140 to $200 per half barrel, for $1.52 to $6.45 per pint equivalent. Your margin on wholesale is 45% to 55%. This is why taproom sales are critical. A pint sold in your taproom generates $6.19 in gross profit. The same beer sold wholesale generates $1.50 to $2.50 in gross profit. Let's model a small brewery doing 600 barrels annually, about 12 barrels per week. That is 74,400 pints equivalent per year. Revenue mix: 60% taproom pints sold directly, 40% wholesale in kegs. Taproom, 44,640 pints at $7, $312,480. Wholesale, 29,760 pints equivalent, 240 half barrels, at $170 per keg, $40,800. Total annual revenue, $353,280. Cost of goods sold at $100 per barrel, 600 barrels, $60,000. That is 17% of revenue. Gross profit, $293,280. Gross margin, 83%. That looks incredible. But now comes the reality of operating expenses. Labor. You cannot run a brewery alone. You need a head brewer who understands recipe formulation, process control, quality assurance, and equipment operation. Salary, $45,000 to $75,000 depending on experience and market. You need cellar support, someone helping with brewing, cleaning tanks, transferring beer, kegging. $32,000 to $48,000. You need taproom staff, bartenders and servers working 50 to 70 hours per week across 5 to 7 days. At $15 to $18 per hour plus tips, and assuming you are open 40 hours per week, you need roughly 50 to 60 hours of staffing per week. Annual payroll for taproom staff, $40,000 to $55,000. You need a general manager or owner-operator handling sales, marketing, finances, compliance, and operations. If you are the owner and you pay yourself $40,000 to $60,000. If you hire a GM, $50,000 to $80,000. Total labor for a small operation, $157,000 to $258,000 annually. At $350,000 revenue, labor is 45% to 74% of revenue depending on staffing model. Most small breweries operate owner-heavy, meaning the owner is the head brewer or GM and works for little to no salary initially to keep labor under 50% of revenue. Rent, $84,000. Utilities. Brewing uses enormous amounts of water, 6 to 8 gallons of water per gallon of beer produced. At 600 barrels, 18,600 gallons of beer, you are using 111,600 to 148,800 gallons of water annually, plus heating water to boiling, running glycol chillers, refrigeration, taproom HVAC, lighting. Monthly utility bills, $1,500 to $4,000. Annually, $18,000 to $48,000. Insurance. General liability, product liability, liquor liability, property, workers' comp. Breweries are high risk due to alcohol service and manufacturing. Annual premiums, $12,000 to $30,000. Repairs and maintenance. Pumps fail, gaskets leak, glycol chillers need servicing, kegs need replacing. Budget 4% to 6% of revenue, $14,000 to $21,000 annually. Marketing and events. Tap takeovers, festivals, sponsorships, social media advertising, glassware, swag. $12,000 to $30,000 annually. Distributor fees and commissions. If you use a distributor, they take 25% to 35% of the wholesale price as their margin. On $40,800 in wholesale revenue, if you are going through a distributor, they are actually paying you 65% to 75% of that. So your actual revenue is $26,520 to $30,600, not $40,800. Let's recalculate with distributor reality. Taproom, $312,480. Wholesale after distributor cut, $28,000. Total actual revenue, $340,480. Licensing and permits, annual renewals, $2,000 to $5,000. Credit card processing, 2.5% to 3% of taproom revenue, $7,800 to $9,400. Waste and shrinkage, 3% to 5% of production, $1,800 to $3,000. Professional services, accounting, legal, TTB compliance, $5,000 to $12,000. Miscellaneous, smallware replacement, cleaning supplies, lab supplies, $4,000 to $8,000. Let's add it up at $340,480 in actual revenue. COGS, $60,000 labor, $185,000. Owner working as brewer, Modest salary, rent, $84,000 utilities, $30,000 insurance, $18,000 maintenance, $17,000 marketing, $18,000 licensing, $3,500 processing fees, $8,500 professional services, $8,000 miscellaneous, $12,000 total operating expenses, $444,000. You are losing $103,520 per year before debt service. Add debt service of $50,000, and you are losing $153,520 annually. This is the brutal reality of small brewery economics. Even with 83% gross margins, the combination of high labor, high rent, distribution cuts, and capital costs makes profitability nearly impossible at 600 barrels per year. The survival threshold for most breweries is 800 to 1,200 barrels annually with 70% plus taproom sales. Below that, you are subsidizing the business with your own unpaid labor and outside capital. Now let's talk about the risks that kill breweries faster than anything else. Quality inconsistency. Brewing is chemistry and biology. Temperature control, sanitation, ingredient freshness, yeast health, all affect the final product. One batch of infected beer, and you dump 7 barrels, $700 in ingredients plus lost revenue of $3,000 to $4,000. Worse, if you serve bad beer in your taproom, your reputation suffers. Customers do not come back. In 2019, a well-regarded brewery in Colorado had a persistent contamination issue that took months to identify and fix. They lost an estimated $80,000 in dumped beer and saw taproom traffic drop by 30% as word spread. They closed 18 months later. Distribution nightmares. Getting into distribution is hard. Staying in distribution is harder. Distributors prioritize products that move volume. If your beer sits on shelves, the distributor drops you. They have limited cooler space and sales rep attention. You are competing against Anheuser-Busch InBev and Molson Coors brands that have massive marketing budgets and slotting fees. Many small breweries sign with distributors, produce beer for wholesale, and then watch it sit in warehouses going stale because the distributor is not actively selling it. You have cash tied up in ingredients and kegs, and you are not getting paid until the distributor sells it. Regulatory violations. The TTB, state liquor boards, and local health departments all have enforcement power. Serving after hours, overserving visibly intoxicated customers, paperwork errors on excise tax filings, unapproved label changes, selling to unlicensed accounts. Any violation can result in fines of $1,000 to $50,000 or license suspension. In 2020, a brewery in Texas had its license suspended for 30 days due to repeated overservice violations. They lost $60,000 in taproom revenue during peak summer season and never financially recovered. Market saturation and competition. You are not just competing against other breweries. You are competing against wine bars, cocktail bars, coffee shops, breweries 3 blocks away, and streaming services keeping people home. If 3 new breweries open within 5 miles of you, your taproom traffic drops. If a well-funded competitor opens with better equipment, better branding, and a chef-driven food program, they pull your customers. Equipment failure. Your glycol chiller dies in the middle of summer. Replacement cost, $15,000. Lead time, 6 weeks. You cannot ferment beer without temperature control. You lose 6 weeks of production during peak season. Or your canning line breaks down the week before a major festival where you plan to sell $12,000 in cans. You scramble, rent a mobile canning service at premium rates, and your margins evaporate. Shifting consumer preferences. Hazy IPAs were the hottest style from 2016 to 2020. Then hard seltzers exploded. Then ready-to-drink cocktails. Customer tastes change fast. If your brand is built around one style and trends shift, you lose relevance. Let's talk about the breweries that succeed. They are not trying to distribute regionally in year 1. They are building a loyal local taproom base first. They focus on the neighborhood, on being the community gathering place. They host events, trivia nights, live music, food trucks, dog-friendly patios. They create reasons for people to visit beyond just the beer. They run lean, owner-operated, minimal staff, high efficiency. They do not hire until revenue justifies it. They optimize their revenue mix. They push taproom sales aggressively because the margins are 3x to 4x higher than wholesale. They limit distribution to profitable accounts only, avoiding the trap of distributing for ego. They develop secondary revenue streams. Contract brewing for others, renting tanks, hosting private events, selling merchandise, maybe adding a small kitchen or food program to increase dwell time and check averages. And they scale deliberately. They hit 1,000 barrels profitably, then invest in a larger system or additional tanks to reach 1,500 barrels. They do not overleverage to build capacity ahead of demand. Let's run the numbers two ways. Best case scenario. You open in a growing city with strong craft beer culture. Your taproom is in a walkable neighborhood with limited competition. You execute well. Quality is consistent. Marketing is strong. Within 18 months, you are producing 1,000 barrels annually, 75% sold through your taproom, 25% through carefully selected wholesale accounts. Taproom, 93,000 pints at $7.50, $697,500. Wholesale, 250 half barrels at $170 after distributor cut, $42,500. Total revenue, $740,000. COGS at $100 per barrel, $100,000. Gross profit, $640,000. Operating expenses, labor, $220,000. You pay yourself $55,000, plus brewer and taproom staff, rent, $84,000 utilities, $38,000 insurance, $22,000 maintenance, $30,000 marketing, $25,000 other costs, $40,000 total, $459,000 operating profit, $181,000. Debt service, $50,000. Net profit, $131,000. You are generating six-figure profit by year 3. You recover your initial equity investment within 3 to 4 years. You have built a sustainable business. Realistic scenario. You open in a saturated market. Taproom traffic is slower than projected. You produce 550 barrels in year 1. Revenue mix, 65% taproom, 35% wholesale. Taproom, 44,330 pints at $7, $310,310. Wholesale, 172 half barrels at $160 after cuts, $27,520. Total revenue, $337,830. COGS, $55,000. Gross profit, $282,830. Operating expenses, labor, $175,000. You work for $35,000. Underpaying yourself, rent, $84,000 utilities, $28,000 insurance, $18,000 maintenance, $16,000 marketing, $15,000 other, $30,000 total, $366,000 operating loss, $83,170. Debt service, $50,000. Total loss, $133,170. You cover the loss with personal savings or additional investor capital. Year 2 is slightly better but still unprofitable. By year 3, you are emotionally and financially exhausted. You try to sell. Buyers offer $200,000 to $300,000, barely covering remaining debt and equipment value. You sell at a loss or close and liquidate. The difference between those outcomes is location, market timing, execution quality, and capital efficiency. The U.S. brewing industry generates over $116 billion in annual revenue. Craft breweries account for roughly $26 billion. There are brewery owners who built businesses worth $5 million, $10 million, even $50 million plus. But the median craft brewery produces under 1,000 barrels annually, generates $300,000 to $600,000 in revenue, and operates on razor-thin margins or at a loss. The people who succeed treat brewing as a manufacturing business with a retail component, not a lifestyle brand. They understand unit economics, labor efficiency, revenue per square foot, and capital allocation. They manage cash flow, control waste, and scale cautiously. The people who fail are the ones who love beer but do not love business, who underestimate capital requirements by 50%, who think great beer sells itself, who do not realize that distribution is pay-to-play and controlled by wholesalers with zero loyalty to small brands. The fermentation happens automatically once you pitch yeast. The beer carbonates on a schedule, but the brewery does not run itself.